welcome back. Let's continue our discussion of gradients and CSS. So in the last video, we took a look at those gradient patterns, right? There were those patterns that were repeating patterns that were created with gradients. And just for fun, let's take a little look at like how you might create that. Now, I'm actually not going to advocate that you do that. I think most of the time, if you have a repeating pattern in the background, it's probably better to do it as an image, okay? But, if you can understand how those patterns work, the gradients can be useful and you can use them in your designs, right? So even when you're not making those fancy patterns, right? So I'm going to start here by looking at this this gradient editor right here, right? So this is the gradient generator, and I'll open that up in its own window here. And let me make that window like a little bit bigger like this, right? So a couple things to know about this, right? So this is a little bit dated. It's been around for a long time. They give you, a Firefox and a Chrome generator, right? And then the gradient generator generates for every browser, right? And the CSS that they provide down here, you can just copy and paste that. It has a lot in it. You don't need all of this most of the time, okay? So they're giving you a comment that has a permalink so you can come back here to your gradient. They're giving you a fallback color for older browsers. So browsers that don't support the gradient, they'll use this line of code. If you're in an older browser that hasn't been updated and only supports an older version of the gradient property, they're giving us the gradient property with the browser vendor prefix, right? So this one is specific for Mozilla, right? It says Firefox 3.6 and to 6.15, right? And then this one is for WebKit. So this is for Chrome and Safari. So it's Chrome 10 to 25 and Safari 5 to 6, but we're like far beyond that, right? Okay. And then this linear gradient right here is for Chrome 26, 12 and Opera, right? And then this filter one right here is for Internet Explorer 6 to 9. So, you don't actually have to use all of this code. You could though if you wanted to be thorough, right? So if you're building a website for, Target or Safeway or some large corporation, maybe you want your website to be solid for, every browser conceivable that someone might use to visit your website. For most purposes and for the homework assignment, we don't really need all of this extra stuff, okay? So just that out of the way, right? Let's take a look at the gradient here. So you can, grab these little handles here and move the gradient color stops around, you can click on a gradient here and just choose one from their menu. Maybe this kind of goldish color right there looks kind of nice, right? You can just pick one out that you like. And again, they kind of look the same. You can also pull these color stops like off the bar like this. So if you want to change how the gradient works, you can do that. This sets, I forget what this one sets. I think this sets the opacity, right? So you can set the opacity stop right here. Like I could say, like, let's be 50% opaque at that stop or 100% opaque, right? Right, so now I'm 50% opaque at this end of the gradient, right? So there's a few things that you can customize here, right? You can play around with that, right? I'm going to just choose a random one and let's try it out. So maybe I'll pick this this blue one right here. So I'm going to pick this one, and then I'm going to pull out just the code here. I think this is the one I want, right? So this is just the regular gradient code. So it's just background, and then it says linear gradient, and this covers W3C, IE10, Firefox 16 plus, Chrome 26, right? So I think that's the one we want. So I'm just going to copy this right here, and I'll go to my Zen Garden page. Oops, and I didn't mean to put that in here, but I'll put it here. That's a gradient I did before, but maybe I'm going to get rid of this and we'll replace it with this one, right? Okay, so there's the gradient, and what you're seeing is the gradient is going from this corner all the way up to the corner up here, okay? And that's because it says, 45 degrees. So I can say to bottom, right? And now it's going to start at the top and then it's going to go directly to the bottom. So it's vertical, okay? And if you want, what's interesting here, and let's just like, like most of the time, this is how you're going to use the gradient. You're just going to have like a subtle gradient. It's going to sit in the background. It's going to make things look nice and kind of fill in the space and not just be a static color. It'll change a little bit, the more subtle the color change, the nicer it is, right? Okay. Let's talk a little bit about how Leah Veru did the patterns, right? So what Leah did was they took the background size property, right, and decided like maybe I want to make my background gradient pattern only 100 pixels by 100 pixels, right? So now you can see that the pattern starts here and then it goes down and it's 100, and it's actually only 100 pixels wide, but since it's the same pattern going across, it looks just like a bar, right? So if we go back here and we change the rotation to say 45 degrees, right? Now you can see that the pattern is repeating, right? And this is where those patterns were created, right? Or the way that they're created, right? It's a little more involved than this, right? But if you think about the pattern and it being also like fading off to transparent, then it would run into the other ones and you could overlap these two by adding multiple gradients, right? And that's where those patterns all come from, okay? So there's a quick exploration of the gradient property in CSS. So you can experiment with that. You're not required to use this for the homework, but you can give it a try and maybe there's something there that will make your pages look great, okay? Thanks for watching.